Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sasios Enterprise Boost Day webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lynn, and I'll be your host for the next 2 hours. We've got a great lineup of speakers with us today. We'll be kicking things off with a sharing of the survey report. From there, we'll move into a presentation by WSG on progress in the workforce, followed by a presentation by ESG on the available financial support that the industry can tap on. And finally, we'll end up with some questions during the Q&A session. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A chat and we'll do our very best to address them all. If your question is addressed to a particular speaker, please do indicate the speaker's names as well. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Richard Ireland, Managing Director from Clarion Events and Sasios Acting President, to give us his opening address. Richard has been involved in live events for over 25 years. His experience includes launching numerous exhibitions, conferences, training events, and digital communities over a broad range of industries throughout Asia Pacific. Please join me on screen, Richard. Over to you.
Thanks, Lynn, and good afternoon, everybody, and a special welcome to all my fellow panelists. Just a brief thing about Sasios as a starting point. We were set up in 1979, and we celebrated our 40th anniversary just before the beginning of COVID-19, and we are the trade association representing meetings, incentives, conventions, exhibitions, and the events industry. Our purpose is to serve this community through serving and connecting industry players and driving initiatives that empower businesses. We work very closely with STB, ESG, WSG, and many other industry players, universities, as well as regional and global industry associations. Next slide, thanks. We have 3 key missions: commerce. Sasios empowers, enables business growth and cultivates new business models by connecting with industry for profitable outcomes. Capability and capacity, training, skills is really important for our industry, and we've spent a lot of time working on that this year and working with helping our industry develop new skills that will arm them very well for the changing environment that we're operating in. And of course, community. Sasios harnesses the power of communities in order to establish and empower new levels of collaboration and transformation. A couple of things we've done this year. We've worked very hard, and the Secretariat has worked very, very hard on SG Safe Event certification and ambassadors. We've trained over 3,500 people, and 60 organisations have been Safe Event certified. This is incredibly important as we prepare for our reopening, that our community feels safe and secure as they attend events in the future. We've worked very hard on the Joint Leadership Summit, where global and regional leaders have come together to work out a roadmap for the reopening of MICE industry. It was fabulous seeing people from all throughout the world come, and just to demonstrate the importance of Singapore as a MICE destination and ASEAN as an economic powerhouse. We've worked also in career and career development, and have worked to try and share the opportunities that exist in the MICE industry, an industry that I think is a very exciting industry and will soon see high levels of growth. And again, we see one of our key roles as attraction and bringing people to the industry. And again, we're the voice of the MICE industry and have identified issues, challenges, and help for the industry. One of the things that's really important during the last 24 months is collaboration and cooperation. And I'm really delighted that in the course of this webinar, you'll hear from Andrew from Projective Insights. He's done a fantastic Voice of the Industry survey. He's going to share that. Jocelyn from WSG, Kahid from ESG, and Brenda from the SME Centre at the SMF. This collaboration is really important, and we look forward to hearing from them. And of course, please get some questions. So on behalf of Sasios and the Secretariat, hope you enjoy the next 2 hours, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard. We'll now invite Mr. Andrew Lau, founder of Projective Insights Consultants, a boutique communications research specialist. Earlier this year, Sasios conducted a survey titled Voice of the MICE and Events Industry to identify the industry's state of health. The purpose of the survey was also to learn about the challenges and opportunities that the pandemic presented. As the official appointed consultancy for this project, we're pleased to have Andrew here with us to share on the survey findings. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lynn. Thanks, Richard, for the kind introduction. Let me share the screen of the findings. A very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Andrew, and I'm from Projective Insights. We are privileged to have been appointed to conduct this survey and as well sharing the findings with you today to the industry. This is a very important study that we conducted back the middle of the year and then towards the late part of the year. The Voice of the MICE and Events Industry Survey was commissioned by Sasios with support from ESG. And we have two parts of it, which is an online semi-structured survey and a series of in-depth interviews with key MICE industry leaders. The objectives are very clear. We want to understand the state of the industry and also to understand what are the challenges that industry players are facing. And the intention is at the end to bring the industry together as one voice and derive insights needed to chart the way forward. We have very valuable insights, and in total, 93 companies responded, with 22 industry leaders participating in the in-depth interviews. So these are the demographics of the 93 companies that participated in the survey. You can see, of course, there are more SMEs, but we have a sizable and representative proportion of large local companies and MNCs as well. A good representation of venue operators, organizers, and suppliers and service providers. A good mix of both Sasios and non-Sasios members, and those who HQ in and out of Singapore. Those who are, of course, the bulk are private limited, and we have some of the rest, as well as companies of various years of operation in Singapore, from those who have been around for a long time to some of the newer companies as well. So we will quickly move into one of the key components and sections of the survey. We wanted to understand what was the impact of COVID on the industry. And as we can see, when we ask this question, using 2019 sales turnover as the base value, correct? Because that would be 100%. Tell us what is the actual expected growth or the actual growth. Of course, the 2020 number would be the actual one. It was a challenging year. You could see from the figures, 69% of the companies talked about a decrease in turnover, and that was substantial. And after that, we had those projecting, 67% projecting that they will also expect a decrease in turnover. Especially critical, you can see out of these 69, 55% actually mentioned that turnover would be greater, would reduce by more than 50%. This is a critical finding. It tells us that COVID has impacted the industry, has devastated some companies, and it is a serious situation. But we can see also that some recovery is expected in 2022, and the actual recovery will come in 2023 as most of the companies project. You can see 40% project that they will have greater revenue compared to 2019, 24%, and when you can see, of course, then 24% still say that there will be a decrease in revenue, but 40% are showing more optimism. They are also feeling that they will employ more staff in 2023 compared to most of them where they had lesser staff in 2020. Okay, now it's also crucial to highlight that the impact of COVID on large locals and MNCs is rather different versus the SMEs. You can see the SMEs, the impact was not as bad. in the initial stage, in 2020 and 2021, but the recovery is slower, whereas the large locals and MNCs expect a quicker recovery, and they'll recover faster in 2022 and 2023. When we asked these companies, all the 93 companies, to select and rank the top 5 issues facing their business, and we asked them to rank 1 for being most important and 5 the least important, the most important factor based on a composite score actually was cash flow for operations. Then came high operation costs and assessing business opportunities in new markets, manpower issues, and finance for growth. These are the 5 key issues facing companies in the industry. Of course, there are other industries, but these are the top 5. And you can see as a top 5, some of these ranks are very high. Like, for example, 41% of the 93 companies that responded actually ranked cash flow for operations as the first rank. And it is a very, very crucial aspect. That's why we will see some of the financing possibilities later. This is a crucial thing that will help the industry. And having known that COVID has really severely impacted the industry, the areas that the businesses felt that they were most impacted includes the number 1 thing, which is revenue reduction. That is a reduction of sales, reduction of revenue. They had the budget cut from clients and customers as far as from HQ, and sponsorship was especially also very badly hit. A double whammy was that even though revenue decreased, costs remained somewhat or even increased, with the overheads, operating costs, salaries, etc. Those did not really reduce, did not really come down, and that was really an issue that they faced. Of course, all the restrictions and regulations, we are travel dependent. We are tourism dependent, and all these things, the restrictions, regulations, the in-person event sizes, crowd sizes, F&Bs, etc., all had a major impact as well on our businesses. However, there's another key problem highlighting which some of the companies highlighted more than the rest is manpower issues that they face. They had problems in hiring, because some were somewhat disillusioned or with the industry, and that's one area we think we will have to work harder to attract talent back to the industry. And talent issues were a greater problem faced by large locals and MNCs more than the SMEs. As you can see, 50 manpower issues, etc., were all things that companies face. Okay, so in terms of the areas that came up with positive outcomes, really it was the major thing was the accelerated adoption and acceptance of digitalization by staff and clients. This really, COVID accelerated the adoption and acceptance of digitization because we could meet face to face, and that quickened the process and the pace and the acceptance of it. And staff also had more impetus and time to learn new skills. They became more independent. They were hungrier for business, and they really worked very hard. Of course, some said staff have better work-life balance. They can work from home, etc. Owing to COVID also, many companies realized that they needed to tap onto new markets. They needed new strategies. They needed new clients, and not just what they did previously the same old way. So these are some of the positive things that came out. And one key aspect was collaboration and sharing among industry players, and some highlighted the elimination of unethical industry players that could not sustain. Yeah, so that's something that is industry. And some mentioned the cutting down of unnecessary expenses and travel expenses as well. So the most helpful factor for companies during the pandemic was digital transformation. And in our in-depth interviews, that was highlighted as something that will continue even after things resume. That digital transformation and digitalization will be a mainstay in the way we work, the way we communicate, and the way we do business. Of course, the government grants and financial assistance and staff unity were all key aspects that helped the companies during pandemic, and we feel that these will continue to be crucial as we move forward. The greatest role or the job functions that changed owing to COVID was the aspect of sales, operations, customer service, and communication. People had to learn different ways to communicate via what we are doing now, rather than face-to-face, to do sales in a different manner, to do operations and learn new skills, and also to serve customer, not just face-to-face, but even in the digital manner. So these were things that the job functions and the roles that were transformed and went through the greatest change owing to COVID. Of course, we see production or even management or even admin impacted by COVID. Everyone had to double up and do more things and do different things as well. But the most crucial and the greatest change was from the top area. You could see 53%. Now, large locals and MNCs highlighted that this is the area, the sales, operations, customer service, and communications was the area that they encountered the largest and the greatest change. Of course, we see that also in SME, but you could see 76% of the companies amongst the large locals and MNCs highlighting that as an issue. But also, you can see that large locals and MNCs made greater changes to their job functions and their roles, and needed to adapt even more and to be more flexible. So that's something that you can see from the findings comparing the large local MNCs, large locals, the MNCs, and the SMEs. Now we will come to the part on the shaping of the future of the industry. Apart from facts, we also asked them whether the companies were confident with the industry. Generally, we could see that companies were still quite decently confident. 17% mentioned that they were very confident, 41% said that they were confident, 26% mildly confident, only 16% were not confident or not confident at all. And the overall mean of 3.6 is still decently healthy. So generally, industry players were still quite confident of the industry moving forward. That being said, you can see that the confidence level is somewhat different. The large locals and the MNCs were more confident with a mean of 4.1, correct? And 24% were actually very confident, and 62% were confident towards the future of the industry, versus SMEs only a mean of 3.4, and 15% very confident and 35% confident. So we can see the challenges facing the SMEs in terms of the sentiments and some of the areas we highlighted earlier in terms of the problems that they are facing. So asking them, besides support from SASUOS, what other areas of support or initiative would they need to move forward? The key area that the largest proportion highlighted was to continue with grants and financial assistance and approve their grant application either quicker, faster, with less red tape and bureaucracy, and straight approval, rather than, So, and you can see the expediting and the easing of regulations for in-person events and of travel was also a key aspect. Then more support from STB and other areas, like we also see human resource, allowing them to employ foreign workers, etc. But the key aspect is we can see the financial aspect that most companies would want and need from the government. And now we come into a few summary findings from our in-depth interviews. We asked all the industry leaders that we spoke to, what do they feel are the critical success factors industry-wide, to bring the industry industry back from this very devastating COVID situation and the pandemic the world has encountered in 2020, and which we are still going through now. And we can summarize these in 5 key points. The first one being clarity, then details, the timeline, being steadfast, and the contingency plans. The first of clarity is that there must be clarity in terms of government policies, plans, the expectations, and the initiatives. Do not flip-flop. That was, if we can summarize. No flip-flopping. If you have something that is being brought forward, stay true with it. The other thing is, most companies highlight that we need details, not just a generic kind of statement, but they want guidelines, templates. What are the crowd sizes for different types of venues, the types of MICE events and FMBs that they can hold. So industry players are saying that we need details, and all these were brought forth to ESG's knowledge and acknowledged by ESG as well. So timeline for the different stages of restrictions of easing, they want to know, they want a specific timeline, and again, no flip-flopping. Once all these details and timelines are committed, there should be no turning back. The key word that a number of key industry leaders used was, let's be steadfast to what is proposed and what is promised. Ultimately, of course, if being steadfast is not enough, what is the contingency plan? If there's anything unforeseen, which we are coming a bit, encountering a bit now with the Omicron, but there should be contingency plans, like, for example, insurance for anything unforeseen, and what are the things that can be done if really something urgent or some emergency emerges. Now, that was the key, the 5 key points to the industry revitalization roadmap. There should only be one industry revitalization roadmap rather than multiple applications. But with this roadmap, there should be other sub-plans. For example, there should be, in terms of planning for how to regain venue full capacity, all the venues should have a roadmap. For example, they talked about there should be a Singapore Sports Hub or a SingX or Suntec City or indoor stadium. At each venue, because there are different sizes, there should be different planning and different guidelines given. So the timeline, the criteria, the types of events that can be done, what are the permissible experiences with FMB, without FMB, must be mask on, got singing, no, don't allow singing, clapping. What are the risk mitigation measures as well? So they realize there needs to be a balance of safety, but most crucial, events must take care of customer experience and ensure economic viability. We are talking about iconic events as well, marquee live events. Now we are discussing about the F1's reopening. How about a big concert? Yeah, the recent JJ Lin concert looked good, but the other big concerts that will put Singapore back, in this roadmap, and in the global arena of us being a key MICE venue. Finally, we talk about digitization and how digitization can improve or spur recovery. A number of key industry leaders highlighted the industry needs to step up to be insights-driven, to be future-ready. Because COVID basically killed investments into the area. To enable a quicker recovery, we need insights, and to ensure that we have high-quality, high-yield events, because these don't happen overnight. And jointly, the government and SASOs must help the industry reinvent itself in this new normal and ensure that we are always looking at what is high quality, high yield events, even when there is a limitation of participants and attendees. So some of the suggestions would be to set up an innovation fund, to help industries innovate and be more creative, especially the SMEs, a campaign to drive appreciation of insights and adopt insights-driven approaches like segmentation and insights-driven business plans, and also regular SME discussions, forums, and engagement sessions to deal with pressing issues and recovery pains, which is something that we feel this is a good part we'll be doing today. So that being highlighted, these are some of the key findings we hope will be useful to the industry, to everyone. So I hand the time back over to Lynn.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next speaker is Ms. Jocelyn Lee from Workforce Singapore. Jocelyn is the Tourism Division Senior Manager in WSG. She has spent 7 years in the human capital development ecosystem and is a firm believer of continuous learning that growth never stops. Jocelyn is here to share on WSG's offerings that support the workforce for emerging job roles. Jocelyn, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jocelyn. Please give me a moment as I pull out the slide. Good afternoon. I'm from WSG. So Singapore has taken a whole of government approach to support enterprise development across the different sectors as this business models adapt to industry transformation. Supporting the economic agencies such as Enterprise Singapore, as well as Singapore Tourism Board, Workforce Singapore oversees Singapore's workforce transformation. Being under the MOM statutory board, our focus is to ensure that all economic sectors have a strong Singaporean core supporting the economy. By ensuring the employability and competitiveness across all workforce levels, WSG aims to meet the workforce career aspirations and match the workforce or people to the right jobs that they desire. WSG has a whole range of support programs that we offer to our enterprises to strengthen the workforce employability. These services include placement services and skills conversion programs. From Andrew's sharing earlier, we learned that one of my sector's concerns was around retaining, developing, and attracting talent. Hence, my sharing will be around these 3 key areas. For companies looking to hire, you could list your vacancies on My Careers Future. As for companies looking to organize in-house masterclasses for your employees, you could also look at the Industry Catalyst program too. The main focus of my sharing will be on the career conversion programs. So these are the 3 career conversion programs that I'll be highlighting today, but the intent is to reskill your employees in emerging areas such as hybrid event management, immersive technology, and digital operations. I'll be elaborating on the CCP or Career Conversion Program for hybrid event executives as it's a newly launched program. So, as you know by now, the onset of COVID in early 2020 had placed a halt on mass physical events and meetings, and this has driven the MICE sector to rapidly pivot into new show and meeting formats. So around mid-2020, Celsius had informed WSG of this industry shift and updated us on trends like hybrid events, accelerated digital adoption, like the use of data analytics, and the use of game technology, such as metaverses, in place of organizing physical trade exhibitions. And this has resulted in the entire value chain of MICE companies and their workforce being consequently impacted. For event managers, they now need to know different types of broadcast and platform technology while strengthening their content curation knowledge, as the audience on digital mediums tend to lose their attention faster. Furthermore, those from the marketing teams now have an increased access to data collected from these hybrid events. Therefore, data analytics has increased importance to learn the interest of its audience, and in order for the audience to be properly, for content to be properly shared with these potential audience in the future. And lastly, the event production crew has to widen their skills to include live streaming and immersive technology such as augmented reality and virtual reality too. So in consultation with Celsius, WSG sought the industry's inputs on the emerging skills to create an industry-relevant program that is 6 months long. Together with our partner, Ngee Polytechnic's Film and Media Studies School, we've created the program called the Career Conversion Program for Hybrid Event Executives. This 6-month program is for companies to actually reskill their employees to gain a broad-based knowledge and foundational skills about hybrid event management across the different job functions within the MICE sector. Companies can send eligible employees to this program and receive up to 90% of salary support across this 6-month period. The curriculum builds the fundamentals in data analytics and hybrid event management before growing the participants' technical capabilities like hybrid event technology and wireless networking. In the final 2 months, participants will bring together all that they've learned to create a project proposal and implement it with guidance from MP's lecturers. This course is heavily subsidized by WSG, and the net course fees are $3,600. So twice a week, the participants will be engaged in classroom learning, whereas the remaining of their time during the work week will be spent back at the workplace. So moving on, I'll be sharing a bit more about the kinds of competencies that they will gain across this course. So participants will be fully immersed in the full suite of hybrid event competencies to ensure technology, to ensure that they create an integrated hybrid event experience for their attendees. Areas such as data analytics, like I mentioned before, event planning, event marketing, video mixing, recording, for example, will be taught to the course participants. Furthermore, they will also be learning the hybrid event production setup, where areas such as multi-camera setup for live streaming, live audio, as well as streaming platform technology will also be covered during this course. As you can see, Ngee Poly has also taken into consideration the needs of the fast-paced MICE industry and to ensure optimal learning outcomes by not overtaxing their trainees. As such, this program aims to build working, and industry-relevant knowledge for course participants to reflect real-world operations. Hands-on practice and guidance by Ngee Poly's trainers during the applied project ensures that this immersive training approach is suitable for adult learners. So for those employees who are hesitant to go back to school because it's been a while, please do not worry. The assessment wouldn't just be solely on examinations, but a mixture of written, verbal, and demonstration of the trainees' acquired capabilities. So if you are already mentally identifying which of your employees can come on board this program, eligible program participants include both existing employees and new hires. For companies who want to move your existing employees into hybrid event roles, you may do so by submitting a business transformation plan and a redeployment plan. Do not worry, we've also prepared sample write-ups to assist companies in the drafting of both plans. Whereas for companies who want to expand your team, you may also consider tapping on this program to onboard new hires with limited to no experience in hybrid events into your company. And so at the same time, they will be able to quickly gain knowledge in hybrid event management. The application documents are what you might already have prepared for the hiring process, so those can be used for your applications for this program too. Should you be interested in this program, you might want to actually contact Mr. Isaac On at the email address that's indicated here. Alternatively, you can call or WhatsApp the number that you see on this screen. I'd like to also add that we've also consulted the industry, and we noted that currently the industry is fairly tied up with your business operations. So we've decided to start this program after Chinese New Year between February and March next year. So moving on, I'll be sharing on two other career conversion programs that's also applicable for the MICE sector. These are the Digital Operation CCP for the Digital Operation Tourism Professionals, as well as the Career Conversion Program for Immersive Digital Experience Tourism Professionals. The CCP for Digital Operation Tourism Professionals is a 4-month program where the intent is aimed at equipping employees with digital operations at the workplace. These examples of the digital operations include robotic process automation and chatbots. For example, past participants from the tours and travel industry have implemented RPA to collect ticket prices from various platforms to be used for predictive analytics for dynamic ticket pricing. I will elaborate on the chatbot use that can also be learned and gained from this digital operations program. So another example will be the employees from Wildlife Reserve Singapore who implemented the chatbot at their workplace to minimize repetitive and time-consuming tasks such as payslip retrieval and the manual dissemination of birthday EDMs to their employees. WRS has implemented these solutions across their company and now uses these chatbots to answer basic HR and payroll questions. With time saved, the HR team can now focus on more strategic type of operations, such as taking on bigger digital projects to provide end-to-end automation of new joiners' onboarding processes. Secondly, is the CCP for the Immersive Digital Experience Tourism Executives. We noted that A rise in the use of immersive technologies across the tourism and hospitality sectors led to WSG curating this program alongside our training partner, Republic Polytechnic. Through a 4-month structured classroom training program, as well as on-job training and an applied learning project, participants will be exposed to different forms of immersive digital solutions that equip them with necessary skills to redesign their work processes, as well as incorporate these immersive digital solutions seamlessly to their current operations. WSG will be providing, similar to the CCP for digital operations tourism professionals, WSG will be providing a 4-month course fee as well as salary support up to 90% for eligible employers. Please note that the target employees include both new and existing employees too. Immersive digital solutions that will be covered in the program include virtual reality, augmented reality, as well as mixed reality. These technologies have been used by various companies for experiential marketing purposes. For example, potential customers of an attraction or destination use virtual reality to evoke an emotional response from their customers by getting them to experience what it's like to really be at that destination or attraction. Also, for augmented reality, it can be used as can be used to create a more immersive experience for the audience, like what Google Maps has done. As for other companies, what they've used augmented reality for, training employees can also use this technology too. And finally, should you wish to receive sector-relevant news, articles, and programs for lifestyle sector employers, as well as updates on latest grants and support schemes, please scan the QR code on the right of the screen and join us on our Telegram channel. You'll receive periodic updates from us. And finally, if you have any specific questions that you might have on the above programs, you may direct your queries to the email address that you see on the screen here. So that's all from me. I just want to thank you for your time, and I'll pass the time back to Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Our final speakers for today are Mr. Khalid Mata, Senior Development Partner from Enterprise Singapore, and Ms. Brenda Khoo, Financing Specialist from SME Center at Singapore Manufacturing Federation. They are both here with us today to share about the possible areas of financial support that the industry can tap on. To present first, we are pleased to invite Khalid on screen. Khalid, please.
Thanks, Lynn. Khalid here from Enterprise Singapore. With me, I have Brenda, who's our financing specialist from SMF. Just give a moment as we put up the slides. Next, please. Yeah, so basically today I'll just go through with you 3 topics. So number 1 is our enterprise financing scheme, which is a loan scheme. Number 2 is I'll provide some tips on how to keep your companies in good financial standing. And thirdly, also share with you some non-financial support that we have. Just to take note that unfortunately, my presentation will not go through with regards to grants. So this is more of a loan scheme perspective. So in essence, currently Enterprise Singapore, we have our enterprise financing scheme, business as usual scheme, we call it AFS-BAU. So with this scheme, we provide risk share to the banks in order for the banks to catalyze lending to our companies. So with our risk share and with this scheme, we hope that companies are able to access credit. And also this credit can be used not only to, to manage it, to tide through difficult times, but also to be used for growth. Now, within our enterprise financing scheme, BAU, we have kind of 6 financing products that can be used depending on your relevant needs. So we have working capital loans, fixed asset, venture debt, trade financing, project financing, and M&A. So I think for members of SASIOS, perhaps the working capital loans and the fixed asset loans will be more relevant. So working capital loans are for you to help on your operating expenses, and also for fixed asset loans is, for example, you want to buy any equipment for your use, right? So eligibility criteria for our enterprise financing scheme, we got 3 main criteria, meaning to say, number one, your business have to be registered in Singapore, you have to have minimum 30% local shareholding, and your group revenue must be $500 million and less. For those schemes with a prefix SME, it is open for SMEs, meaning to say either your revenue is less than 100 million or your maximum employment is less than 200 employees. Next slide, please. Okay, so this provide more detail of the various kind of financing needs. So as I mentioned, it can be used to kind of tide through this difficult period, but also it can be used for growth. So just zoom in on working capital and fixed asset. So for our working capital loans, you can access up to 300K in loans from the banks with a maximum tenure of 5 years. And for fixed asset, it's up to 30 million with a tenure of 15 years. For younger companies that's less than 5 years old, we provide the banks with a higher reshare at 70%. So meaning to say the banks will have an increased lending appetite to lend. So without our reshare, actually, what happens is the bank usually will not lend to such companies. Next slide. So in addition to our EFS BAU scheme, I think due to COVID, we have introduced our we call it COVID schemes. So we have 3 COVID schemes. Basically, these are our TBL, Temporary Bridging Loan Scheme. Currently, as of today, it will expire on 31st March next year. The use of TBL is to provide access to working capital. The reshare is 70% and the loan quantum is 3 million. Okay, there's an interest rate cap to make sure that the interest rates are kept low at 5%. And SMEs and non-SMEs with 30% local shareholding can access our TBL schemes. Next slide. Okay, this is perhaps less relevant for SASIOS members, but in addition to TBL, we also have enhanced our trade and project schemes at 70% reshare and with an enhanced loan quantum. So for trade, it's actually to finance buying and purchase of inventory and raw material, and for project, if you have a domestic project, you can use a domestic or overseas project, you can use our EFS project loans to finance your projects. Next slide. So who are the banks who are participating in our scheme? So basically, we've got about 20 financial institutions. We got our 3 local banks and various other financial institutions. So feel free, you can approach them. Their contact details are on our website, and it covers the different kind of financing products from your short-term, small quantum kind of financing to also to your larger kind of financing that can be provided by the banks. Next slide. Yeah, okay. So this is actually kind of like a cheat sheet of our schemes. So on the left side here, you can see our EFS BAU scheme, which we have at 50% reshare, and there's no expiry date for this. And also our COVID enhancement schemes like TBL, which will expire next year, March. Below, we have our eligibility criteria for our schemes. So don't worry, we'll share with you these slides. So this is actually a cheat sheet for you to know which kind of loans that can be relevant to your business needs. Next slide. Now, so I mentioned about reshare. So I just want to kind of share with you what does reshare mean. So as I mentioned, ESG, we partner with our banks to offer loans to Singapore company. Now, without our reshare, banks will be unlikely or be more selective to lend to our local enterprises. Hence, with our reshare, the intent is to increase the bank's appetite and willingness to our companies. Now, when I say 50% reshare or 70% reshare, it doesn't mean that the companies only pay 50% or 30% of the loan. The company or the borrower still is responsible to pay 100% of the loan, right? Only if there's a loan default, then we will share with the bank's outstanding loan amount. Next slide. Yeah, so actually, this is an important slide. So I want to share with you some tips on how to get your company into good financial standing. And when your company have good financial standing, it's easier for you to access financing. So in essence, number one, there's eight here, but it's actually separated into three kind of groups. So number one is to actually maintain a good personal credit history, because the banks or the financial institution, they also look at your personal credit records. So if you have a bad kind of personal credit record, you don't pay your personal loans on time and so on and so forth, the banks will be unlikely to give you a loan, irregardless of what's happening in your company. Because, personal loan behavior is actually a reflective of how you run your business. The second bucket is actually you must have a good financial management kind of processes and capabilities, meaning to say, separate your business and personal accounts, have a clear business plan, monitor and maintain your good financial position and cash conversion cycle, keep your accounts up to date, and maintain good banking conduct. If you have loans, make sure that you service your loans properly. But most importantly, from this slide, I just want to kind of stress is that if you require any help in terms of financing, please reach out early. Don't last minute when you're already in ICU, right? Then you reach out to Enterprise Singapore for help, or you reach out to your banks for help. So number one, please reach out early. Who to reach out for? To reach out to is you can reach out to your banks firstly, because if you have obligations to them, and also you can reach out to Enterprise Singapore if you need any help. So I stress upon the point number 8 over here. Next slide. Now, okay, so this is actually our non-financial support. I have a QR code over here. If any companies or any success members that require some assistance, please scan this QR code. It will go to a kind of a form. You can fill in your details, and afterwards we will contact you, because we know that some things are kept personal. So I'll just maybe 10 seconds in this slide. If you need any help, please scan this QR code, fill in the data, and we'll reach out to you if you require any financing assistance. Be it, you cannot service your loans, or you have financing questions, or you require financing assistance. Feel free to do this. I'll just stay here in a few more seconds. Okay. Yeah, next slide. These are our common FAQs. I will not run through them. We will share with you this slide. Next one. Yeah. So in addition to our financing help, we also have our non-financial assistance. Next one. So the first actually, okay, so we note that many SMEs lack the financial management capabilities. Actually, after, COVID hit, we recognize that this is an issue, and we have actually worked together with PwC to curate and develop a course specific to help SME business leaders on how to enhance their financial management capabilities. The course content will cover key fundamental topics, for example, like understanding financial statements, cash flow management, how to raise debt, how to raise equity, how to unlock cash, and what are the warning signals for you to see with regards to your company being in a good financial standings or not. Now, WSG is supporting this course, so actually the upfront kind of investment for this is very low, for between $100 to $300, depending on your age. And we will be continuing this course in 2022. So if if SME business leaders or your accounting department or your CFO requires some capability enhancement, feel free to kind of enroll in this course. So in 2020, we have 150 SME owners that attended this course, and hopefully we will hit more numbers for next year. Next slide. Next slide. Now, in addition to our SME course with PwC, we've also placed 3 financing specialists in 3 SME centers. So these 3 financing specialists, they are super experienced. They come from at least 15 years banking background, and they can help companies, the broad base of companies, in terms of their financial kind of questions. So feel free to contact any one of them. Brenda is here with me, and she will go through with you some examples of how of the help that she renders to companies. Over to you, Brenda.
Thanks, Khalid, for the sharing. Good afternoon to all attendees. I'm Brenda, a financing specialist with Enterprise Singapore. I joined Enterprise Singapore early this year and was deployed to SME Center at Singapore Manufacturing Federation. I assist SMEs to analyze financials, advise and evaluate various financing options which are appropriate for them. I've worked in various local and foreign banks in my past experiences and specialized mainly in relationship management and risk analyst roles. So some of the advisory service will be like diagnosis of financial health by analyzing the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow to address the possible areas of gaps or weaknesses, to advise on financial management, and to develop business plans and financial projection, to provide guidance on putting up loan application together with necessary supporting documents, and to facilitate the subsequent meetup with the financiers. And we also advise on refinancing, restructuring, and insolvency process. So we also do advise and evaluate the various financing and appropriate options. So feel free to contact any one of us in the SME Center. My contact direct line and email is listed on the screen. I'll be sharing 2 examples of live cases from the events industry which I've assisted during the course of my work. So let us quote an example of a company A, which is in the exhibition planner business. The company actually deals with the printing of materials, signages, and events backdrop. The company have existing bank loans, but they require actually new loans for their business growth and working capital needs. So as financing specialists, we actually assist in the advisory of the loan application process, the documents and the criteria needed required to submission to the banks. So in absence of collateral, the banks often request for personal guarantees for unsecured loans. Why do they need the provisions of PG? It's actually a signal to the bank that the owners are committed to repay the loan. So maintaining a good personal credit score is important by not defaulting on personal loans, not to overborrow. So with the assistance of the financing specialist, the company actually managed successfully to obtain loans from the banks. The second example I'm quoting is the company B from the sound system support business. The company is in charge of setting up sound system and audiovisual supports for events. Company has a few existing bank loans with the bank, but due to current restriction, they are unable to meet the monthly repayment capabilities. So the financing specialist assists in advisories that we often, as what Khalid mentioned, companies should always reach out early if they require assistance. They can always reach out to their banks, or if they have cash flow issues, or any one of us in Enterprise Singapore or the Finance SME Center. So the financing specialist advise on the various mode of loan repayment as the company is in distress and is unable to meet the monthly repayment schedule. Financing specialists assist to communicate with the banks and assist the company to provide future contracts and cash flow projection for visibility of repayment, which is a requirement by the banks. So with the assistance of the financing specialist, the companies managed to successfully obtain a loan moratorium from the banks, which had managed to ease some of their monthly financial commitment. So this brings the end of my presentation. I shall hand it over back to Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khalid and Brenda. We'll now move into the Q&A session. I would like to invite back the following speakers to join me on screen: Richard, Jocelyn, and Khalid. Ladies and gentlemen, just a gentle reminder, if you have any questions for our speakers, please do type them into the Q&A function in the screen below. Maybe we'll start off with some simple questions. Since ESG just finished their presentation, perhaps Khalid can share with us in terms of the application timeline. I think in general, people are usually very admin adverse. Could you advise the timeline that usually takes for all these processing? And also, assuming that the first application doesn't go through, is there usually like a cooling period until the next time that the company can apply again for such financial assistance?
Right. So from bank loans perspective per se, the typical application duration is about 2 weeks and up to 1 month. All right. So it depends on whether the company submits the application, form in full and so on and so forth. So it may take longer if there's incomplete documentation. So rule of thumb about 2 weeks to 1 month. So many companies, they tend to not submit documentation in full. Right, they're missing some financial projection, they're missing some forms that they forgot to sign, and so on and so forth. So if they're not aware, they can go back to their banker and really engage their banker, or can come to us or come to our financing specialist at SME Center. So that's number one. Number two, to your second point, in the event that you apply for a loan and the loan is rejected, right? I think you need to really find out what is the main reason why the loan is. There may be various reasons, as I mentioned to you. It can be a poor personal credit score. It can be your loan repayment behavior previously for existing loans not so good. It can be you have no financial projections in order to give the banks comfort that you can repay the loan. So there may be various reasons. So if your loan is rejected, really deep dive on the reasons. And then try to mitigate this reason, the cause of it. So usually rule of thumb is about 3 months, because your credit, like if it's a personal credit issue, your personal credit issue refreshes every 3 months. Then you have to make sure you pay all the personal loans on time and so on and so forth. Wait for 3 months and you apply for a company loan. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you. And also one more short question. Someone was asking, if they're not a locally owned company, can they still apply?
They can apply for loans, but in order for the banks to tap on our EFS scheme, the minimum requires 30% Singapore shareholding. So as long as you're 30% Singapore or PR shareholding, you can tap on our enterprise financing schemes.
Right. Okay, thank you for that, Khalid. Jocelyn, question for you. Based on the career conversion programs you shared, are there any trends that you can share with us based on your observations in the workforce, maybe before COVID and then during COVID, any comparisons that you can make? And maybe just a quick share, any success stories that you've heard from these programs?
So what we have noticed in the last 1 to 1.5 years is that there is this massive need for emerging digital skills. So things like data analytics, like I mentioned earlier, has been something in such demand that we have been getting queries from different parts of the MICE sector requesting to come on board our programs, and in which we have actually onboarded some companies onto our programs as well. So one of which is a large local company that's onboarded close to several of their employees onto our digital marketing program as an example, to showcase their need for digital marketing as an emerging skill set. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jocelyn. Richard, maybe you can share your thoughts, based on what Jocelyn just mentioned, emerging digital skills. What are your thoughts on this? Having been in the industry for so long, just what are your thoughts on how digital skills are emerging? And maybe you could tell us a bit more about what Satios has been doing to help, boost all this as well.
The first thing is when COVID struck, live events became almost impossible, and almost impossible at scale. and that prevented a really important go-to market channel. That was very, very sad, and but that was the reality. So the whole digitalization came about, and one of the things that we experience as an industry is we've never had so much data, registration data, behavioral data, and really, I'm so sort of impressed and heartwarmed around this, is the key is, well, how do we use that data? You know, we as an exhibition industry, we used to always collect data, but we've never had as much. And I think the key is, if we have really valuable data, we can create a more personalized, a more valuable product. And I really think, you know, as Jocelyn was saying, if we can do that, we can create huge amounts of value in our products. So I think one of the things that we don't know, two things that we don't know, and that is the exact pace of recovery. And we don't know the business model that will emerge. But one thing that we do know for sure is if we build our capabilities and our competencies, we'll be in good shape for whenever that recovery comes. Actually, I'm quite confident the recovery will come a lot closer and quicker than we think. But the key is, as individuals, and certainly as an industry, the stronger those competencies around digital, the greater value. When there's greater value, we'll be able to charge more as enterprises and be able to create greater value. So I think if that's the real skill, and I think whatever that definition of hybrid ends up being, and none of us really know what that looks like, whether that's live hybrid, whether that's on-demand digital, whether that's I mean, I think the key word is really the digital. Having that skills will be able to really help our workforce. Some of the things that Sasios has learned is that data is super important around the safety controlled environment. We know that, and there's been lots of training and learning around that, but also around attendees and their behavioural piece. We also know that if we can use that and harness that, again, we have to create huge amounts of value.
Thank you, Richard. Khalid, back to you. You know, in the survey sharing earlier, you know, obviously people did indicate that finance was a big challenge. Financial issues was a big challenge during COVID. Could you share with us, you know, based on the findings, would you say that these trends are definitely in line with what you've observed in your role and helping companies with all these financial assistance? Maybe you can share a bit more about that, you know, on the ground information and what you've observed.
Yes, Lin, thanks. Absolutely. So you're right. It's kind of congruent to what we have observed. What was interesting to me was that, maybe I just hold on first. So what I saw is that there is a need to access loans and credit. So hence we have, launched our COVID measures that initially was at 90% reshare and then at 70% reshare. So in fact, what we noticed was actually quite a number of folks in the MICE industry had accessed some loans, and that loans have moratoriums in that. So in fact, it helped some of your companies within the MICE sector access credit. That's number one. Number two, what I noticed also from the survey is that due to COVID, revenues have dropped, but the costs have not really dropped. I think that is quite a worrying sign. I think in this kind of situation, I think companies need to really assess their own standing and see in what ways you can reduce costs, because it is not good financial prudency to really maintain such costs, or having increasing costs while your revenues are decreasing. So, but sometimes it is also difficult to identify the portions of costs that you can reduce. So this is where I think we want to reach out to also help members of Sasios if they need any assistance to identify which cost areas that you are able to reduce. Happy to engage.
Right, thanks so much. Someone just asked another question for ESG. The person was asking, because they noticed you talked a lot about loans earlier in your presentation. The person is asking, at this point, do you still have any grants that you offer to companies, or is it purely focused on loans at the moment?
Yeah, so we do provide grants. So unfortunately, I'm not from the grants team. So we have our capability development grant and our PSG grants. It is still there. It's not going away. So please feel free to check out our grants website. there's a whole list of grants that is accessible for companies.
Right, thanks. So I guess in short, yes, the answer is yes, grants are still available.
Yes,
Great.
yes, they are.
We have another question that's coming from an attendee. The question is, what skills industry should event students focus on to better prepare themselves to enter a COVID-19 world? Maybe Richard, I'll let you start with that one.
I think there's a couple of skills, but I think as a starting point, creativity, imagination and curiosity, they're not skills, but they're really important attributes. And I think for many on this call and many of us during COVID, I think resilience is a really important thing. Again, they're not really skills. I think the skills that are becoming super important, and I can't emphasize this enough, is around data and behavioral and customer insight. You know, I want to share something that I've heard in our industry for many years, and about Singapore. People have talked about Singapore being a high cost environment, and that may or may not be true. I'm not going to debate that at this stage. But what I'm talking about is if you have a high level of customer insight, which comes from data, pre-show, pre-activation, pre-digital, whatever you want to call it. If you have that insight, you can deliver a high value service. And I can guarantee if you deliver a high value service, you can charge a high price. And I think that is something that is so critical that we come into that industry, understanding what customer wants through data, delivering it, and then proving it through data. And I think this data lens will become such a valuable shield and tool for us all in this industry. And short-term cash alone, and that's always going to be a challenge, but longer-term value creation really comes from insight, and insight comes from data. And the more we all can learn about that is so critical. And I think one of the things that's become really clear, and I know this with my own organization, you walk into an exhibition and it's full and people say, that's fantastic. You walk into a conference room and it's full and people say, that's fantastic. You go into a digital activation or a webinar, people are saying how many people, how old are they, how long do they stay, what's their dwell time, how many click-throughs. Wow, isn't that incredible? And this is one of the behavioral things that will be a long-term, that will stay with our industry for a long time. So I suppose it's going to be here to stay. So when we go back to live, I'm thinking people are going to be asking very similar questions. I just don't think they're going to turn off. So customer insight, data analytics, I think is the foundation of a very successful business.
Another question to add on to that, someone was asking, for employers as well, how can we tap on the youth minds to bring events forward? Do you have anything to share on that, Richard?
The youth mind?
Yeah.
I think youth is not a disadvantage. I think a fresh set of eyes, fresh lens is an incredible advantage. You know, I think one of the things that we've seen in technology, it doesn't discriminate through lack of experience. It rewards innovation. And again, innovation isn't just something that we can create on the back of an envelope or back of a stamp. It really comes from valuable insight. And I don't think you need an age to put to have the experience to do that. So I think you know, when many of us studied at my time, we did general degrees and that served us well. But I think at the moment, very specific skills are required, very specific competencies are required. And when you have specific skills and competencies, you become so valuable to an organization very soon, and very quickly. But I think youth is an incredible advantage. And, you know, I love employing super young people who are open-minded. And again, as I was saying, curiosity is a wonderful thing. And that sort of comes at any age.
Great, thanks for that. Jocelyn, since you're coming from a workforce perspective, would you like to also share your thoughts on that? You know, what skills should event students focus on to better prepare themselves to enter the COVID-19 world? And the second question was, you know, how can you tap on the youth minds to bring events forward? Anything to share on that?
So what we've noticed for emerging skills within our recent engagements with MICE companies also includes a broad-based understanding of the different broadcast technology that's available out there. So which is also exciting because this is where we actually see the marrying of events as well as broadcast knowledge, which is not common in the past. But now we are increasingly seeing this marrying of two different sectors that's coming together. So that's also another area which I thought event students can actually focus on. So with regards to your second question about how do we tap on the youth minds, I thought that the thing about youth is you have the energy, you have the tenacity to actually pull through and hope, actually, basically to pull through creative projects and to see things from a different perspective. So I thought that is where youth, that as in tapping on youth, is what the MICE sector can do.
Very inspiring. Thanks for that. Khalid, since we're on this topic of skills or knowledge, based on your meetings and discussions with all these companies that come to you for financial support, are there areas that you've identified that you think companies lack in terms of knowledge for financial stuff? Because I'm sure finance isn't something that comes naturally to everyone. What do you think are the basic skills you think companies in general need when it comes to finance?
That's right. So sad to say, unfortunately, the level of financial literacy amongst our broad-based companies is not so high. So hence, we have identified this actually kind of like a root cause why companies are unable to access loans, are unable to access third-party financing. Hence, we have actually worked with PwC, as I mentioned before, on really a short course, a 3-day course, to kind of enhance their capabilities on financing. So this can be really your basic skills like understanding financial statements, how to carry out business analysis, how to do financial projections, how to be and when they do this, they can also identify whether they are financial resilient or not, right? How to identify early warning signs that whether their business is doing well or not doing well. So these are kind of the key capabilities that the company requires, and we have developed a short course, and we will be continuing this course over to 2022. Hopefully, success members can join in. This is supported by WSG. So actually, the total fees for the course is about $1,000, but with WSG support and SSG support, I think companies only pay between $100 to $300. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, thanks for that. So the next question I have, I'd like to maybe put it out to all three of you, but we'll start maybe with Richard first. The question is, any advice and areas to look out for if I were to start a new business in the MICE industry? Richard, any advice for that?
Wow. Again, just to sound like a bit like a broken record, a lot of us start events and we look at what potential sponsors first, and we look at potential exhibitors first. But I think in some ways that's a bit back to front. And many people in the events business, we used to say to ourselves, if we build it, they will come. Well, maybe they'll come, maybe they won't come. But I think that the best bit of advice I could give is spend the time doing the customer insight. Because if you have buyers there, you will get sellers there. And that's a fact. So when you do your research, and I'm more talking about trade, but I'll reference to consumer in a moment. But when you do your community research, do the analysis, do the questions, do the insight. What are they looking to achieve? What are their objectives? What are their timelines? Get that insight right from the beginning and build it from an attendee and a buyer perspective first. And that's really interesting. But I think that's the first piece. And the second thing is look at it from a situation of what problem am I hoping to solve? So again, many years ago, we'd build an exhibition with lots of exhibitors, and we thought, okay, it's fantastic, people will come. But I think let's throw that on its head and look at what problem am I hoping to solve, and what insight from a community or various communities do I have? And once I know that, it becomes a really, really, really valuable piece. So I think that's the first and second bit of advice. I think the third thing is lots of energy, lots of tenacity, lots of resilience is required. But I think one of the things that we've all experienced with COVID is people are really missing that human connectivity. And I think when it's really possible, I think we're going to see a huge demand for human connectivity, communities coming together, and that's going to create lots of opportunities. I know there's going to be a few steps back, but we've heard about that. But let's just focus more on the positive today. People have missed human connectivity, and that's going to create great opportunities. So lots of insight, lots of tenacity, lots of elbow grease, and I think we're all looking for different experiences, and no one monopolizes, whether big or small. I don't think any organization monopolizes experience. So I think this is a great industry to be very entrepreneurial in. So, you know, there'll be ideas that that young people have that will be on par or better than established players. So, you know, bring it on, and look forward to seeing those great new ideas.
Thanks, Richard. Jocelyn, how about you? Any advice for people looking to start a new business in the MICE industry? Maybe you can also share any other programs that WSG offers that could maybe help with this whole transition phase.
So how WSG assists our company is through the hiring of new joiners to the sector. So people who probably did not are undergoing career conversion. So perhaps you're a business starter, like a business owner, and you're looking to hire someone from perhaps an adjacent sector, for example, the broadcast industry. You can put them on our programs in order to enjoy the salary support and get an employee who has industry relevant skill sets. So so I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Khalid, I know we've touched a lot on the financial skills already, but anything else to add that you think newbies could definitely pick up in the finance area?
Sure, I'm not an entrepreneur, but happy to chime in. I echo what Richard mentioned. So number one is really to understand the pain points and the problem statements of the sector. So do your homework, do your research, understand the market, understand your competitors, and so on and so forth. If you can come up with a solution to address the pain point, that'll be excellent. And number two is also to differentiate yourself, understand what unique value proposition that you can bring to the market. And with this differentiation, maybe you can capture, a new market niche in the market, and also maybe create your own market. So I think these are the two kind of main issues now. Addressing the problem statements and pain points, and come up with your own unique value proposition. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Jocelyn, back to you. We have two questions for you. The first one is, for the CCP, will the enterprise that partners in this program be ready to offer the trainee opportunity to work in their cooperation? Is this something that will happen?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Do you mind repeating it?
For the CCP, will the enterprise that partners in this program be ready to offer the trainee opportunity to work in their corporation?
Oh, okay. So there are two ways where they can actually collaborate with us. So for companies, number one, if they already have an identified potential new joiner or a potential talent, they can actually put them on board our program. Or if we also have our My Careers Future, in which we can also try to help link up these new joiners or potential job seekers to these employers as well. So these are two ways in which enterprises can partner with us.
And then the second question was, is there any customized grant or supports for the newcomers to the MICE industry? Any special grant supports for newcomers in this industry?
So if it's for newcomers, I would say how we define as newcomers are individuals who are career switchers, typically who have those who have graduated 2 years from their last point of education graduation. And for them to come on board, it is to come on board our CCP programs, hopefully with an identified employer. Yeah.
Okay, I've got one last question for you as well, Jocelyn. Do you have any advice for people who think they might be too old to join the CCP program? Do you think there's any age limit to this? I think I've definitely met a few people who dream of changing careers, but they think maybe they're a bit too old. Maybe you can share what's happening on your end. Are people really just only the young ones that think about this?
So the interesting thing about COVID, it has actually created an impetus for people to try out new careers because, life is short, right? So we've seen people being bold enough to actually undertake that career conversion, going from what they would typically deem as desk-bound careers to new ones. For example, like hospitality, and in this case, MICE. So to answer your question, no, there is no age limit. And on top of that, for employers who are very keen to hire the older workers because of their experience and their wealth of experience, rather, we would have a higher level of salary support as well. So this is just to incentivize our employers. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Khalid, two last questions for you. Are there any specific industries that the enterprise financing scheme is targeted at? And does enterprise financing scheme help with newly established enterprises? These two questions, last ones for you.
Sure, no problem. So for the first one, so it's a broad-based scheme. Any company that meets all eligibility criteria in PAN sector can access enterprise financing scheme. And the second one is with regards to new companies. So generally for new companies, we don't really recommend you to take up loans. But if you are startup, we have also actually startup grants. So it's under Startup SG. You can check out the Startup SG website. There are startup grants to help companies start up. And on top of that, if you are a very innovative kind of company, we do have this thing called venture debt loans, more for the younger companies to access loans. But that is a bit complicated kind of loan instrument because there's warrants involved. More related to, if you're a VC-backed kind of innovative enterprise and you require debt financing in between your funding rounds. Right, but in general, I just want to be a bit cautious that if you're newly set up companies, try not to obtain loans, get your credit history, get your revenues, get your cash flows, and then once you are having good financial standing, then you can apply for a loan to grow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last one for Richard. Richard, maybe you could share, wrap up this Q&A session by sharing a bit more about the SACIOS community. I think throughout the year, obviously, a lot of people have been inquiring about the SACIOS membership, the SACIOS community, and how that's going to benefit them, going into 2022. Could you share a bit more about your views as an acting president of why you think it's so important that the community comes together now during this pandemic?
So just to thank you for that, Lynn. As SACIOS spells out, it's the Association of Convention and Exhibition Organisers and Suppliers. When we are successful as an industry, there's a very long economic tail. And that's one of the great things about the live event business, a long economic tail, and impacts many people in the community. So that's the first thing. When success happens, it's shared and it's a long economic. In fact, just to share with many people on this call, pre-COVID, this industry employed 34,000 people and contributed about almost 0.8% of GDP. I think just to share with you on the business tourism side, the industry brings in some of the most valuable tourists we have. So when we operate as an industry successfully, it's shared. I think the second thing is when we talk to agencies, when we talk to business federations, when we talk to government, when we talk with various agencies, it's done as a collective and a united voice. And I think that's really, really important thing. On this call, it's so heartwarming to hear about the work that WSG is doing, with ESG is doing, on lots of many different angles. And I think that works better if we talk collectively rather than individually. And if we can do so as a united voice, we can share the challenges that we have, but I think also importantly, the contribution that we can have longer term to the Singapore economy. I think finally, one of the really important things, the identification of how do we train our industry, and how do we work with supportive economic agencies on that really important conversion and skill upgrading. There's been lots of things on this call that we've learned about that pre-COVID, we understand that we were fairly highly skilled, but realize that there's some areas that we could have done better in, data, certainly video production that Jocelyn talked about, and lots of different areas. And I think when we talk in a united way, we can really work very well with our academic institutions, but also the economic agencies. And I think they're really the key things. I think finally, as many people on this call may know, we've worked with STB very closely. We're very supportive of STB's pilot program, and I think pilots are so important in our industry as we learn about new data points, putting sort of some of those things into practice, which will allow us lifting of restrictions driven totally by data rather than other things, and that's really important as we come together and recover strongly. So, hopefully that answers your question. But I think what's really important is a united voice, but work very collaboratively with many agencies, such as on this call today.
Thanks so much for that, Richard. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for the Q&A session today. A big thank you to our speakers for joining us today and participating in the Q&A session. Just a few mentions before we end today's webinar. If any of you would like to learn more about the Safe Event certification that SACIOS offers for organizers, suppliers, and venues, please scan the QR code on your screens or drop us an email at education@sacios.org.sg. At SACIOS, we also offer the My Sustainability certification. This program was developed to help enterprises with limited resources to attain the locally recognized sustainability certification. Please scan the QR code on your screens for more info or email us at education@sacios.org.sg. For those of you who are looking to upskill yourselves in MICE-related programs, do check out our full suite of programs using the QR code or email us at education@sacios.org.sg. And finally, at SACIOS, we're also looking to expand our community and welcome new members from the MICE ecosystem. If you'd like to learn more about our membership and members in our community, please scan the QR code or email us at secretariat@sacios.org.sg. And finally, we would truly appreciate if you could take a moment to complete our webinar survey. Please scan the QR code on the screen and share your feedback with us. Thank you again to our fellow speakers and to all attendees for joining us. Take care and stay safe.